New York Attorney General Letitia James indicted another foe of President Trump in legal hot water. House Speaker Mike Johnson on the Middle East peace deal, the government shutdown, military pay, air traffic controller shortages, and rising health care premiums. Hamas said today the war in Gaza has ended permanently. That's a quote. Yet there was Hamas gunfire and an Israeli airstrike. We discussed with Israel's ambassador to the United States. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. We begin with some very new news. A grand jury in Virginia moments ago indicted New York Attorney General Letitia James. We don't know the number or the specificity of those charges. If in the course of this show we find out, I promise you we will let you know. For some background, as a candidate for Attorney General, James vowed to investigate Donald Trump. She brought and won a civil fraud case against Trump, his adult sons, and the Trump Organization. Trump was ordered to pay $355 million in penalties for inflating property values, among other issues. James now joins former FBI Director James Comey as perceived enemies of the president charged by his Justice Department. We start with CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman, who joins me now from the Broadcast Center in New York. Katrina, this has just broken. Tell us what we know.
As of now, we know that this grand jury has indicted Letitia James on one charge. We do not yet know what the details of that charge are. We are working hard to find that out. But we do know that she was being investigated for potential mortgage fraud. That included possible allegations of wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud. So it could be any of these things, Major. And we know that Trump has been wanting this to happen. Just yesterday, there was the arraignment of James Comey, as you were talking about. Letitia James has been in his crosshairs ever since the New York civil fraud trial, which I sat through with both of them in that room. It really hit home for him that she came after his properties, that she claimed that he falsified his business records, the values of his property. So if this is in fact linked to a mortgage issue, it is also him taking that back in her direction. And this is also potentially action that happened when Letitia James was as a private citizen, not in her professional capacity, if it's what we think that it might be.
And Katrina, the jurisdiction here, Eastern District of Virginia, as I understand it, this regards a mortgage transaction possibly in Virginia with a niece of Letitia James. Do I have that correct?
That's our understanding of what was being investigated, that there was a power of attorney document that misstated that it was Letitia James' primary residence, although there is also documentation of an email that she sent to a lawyer where she clarified that it was not, in fact, that residence, that she was signing that document to support the loan for her niece, is our understanding.
Katrina Kaufman, thank you very much. And if we learn the specificity of the charge, I know you'll come back and let us know. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Now to the story that has dominated the news the last 24 hours. Quote, "This is an extraordinary moment, a slender but real chance at a new beginning." So writes The Economist about President Trump's Middle East peace deal. Here is Secretary of State Marco Rubio at today's cabinet meeting.
Because of the work you put in, and honestly, not only is there no other leader in the world that could have put this together, Mr. President, but frankly, I don't know of any American president in the modern era that could have made this possible. Because of the actions you have taken unrelated to this, and because of who you are and what you've done and how you're viewed.
This deal, the result, The Economist says, of Mr. Trump's, quote, transactional bullying style of diplomacy, and the magazine means that as a compliment, carries unique promise, an end to the pulverizing war in Gaza, the return of all Israeli hostages, living and dead, the disarmament of Hamas, a vast acceleration in humanitarian deliveries to starving Gazans, and, dim though it may seem, the prospect of new governance in Gaza not reflexively and militarily hostile to Israel's very existence. If all this holds, Gaza may be rebuilt. Israel will step back from its war footing, and coexistence might tentatively be explored. Yet, as we know, in the Middle East, promise walks side by side peril. Mistrust remains deep. Israelis will never forget the October 7th atrocities. And only about a quarter of Israelis surveyed now say they support a two-state solution. That's down from 60% who supported that idea back in 2012. Meanwhile, majorities of Gazans say Hamas has committed no atrocities at all, and 40%, when surveyed, say they still support armed resistance. These are, to put it plainly, genuine human impediments to peace, ones that political leaders, should they so decide, must find ways to overcome. The first test will come with living up to phase one of Trump's deal, Hamas's release of Israeli hostages and Israel releasing Palestinian prisoners, in addition to a cessation of military activity in Gaza. But there was shooting there today, a potentially worrisome sign. Israel's ambassador to the United States, Yakil Leiter, discussed this near-term scenario with me a bit earlier today.
Ultimately, the plan has to move from phase one to phase two. And phase two means what the Prime Minister of Israel has been saying now for 2 years. Gaza cannot remain a jihadi stronghold. Hamas has to be disarmed. That's part of the plan. And Gaza demilitarized.
We will hear more from Ambassador Leiter later in the program. President Trump appears so hopeful that his deal will hold that he intends to fly to the region this weekend to cement a solution that could, quite honestly, transform the region if it holds. I'm joined now by Aaron Navarro at the White House. Aaron, always good to see you. Thank you so much for your time. The president was just talking about this yet again this afternoon with the Finnish president. What did he have to say?
Yeah, President Trump said he will be going sometime Sunday to the Middle East, specifically Egypt and Israel. In Egypt, he says that he will participate in an additional signing ceremony, and potentially in Israel, where he expects hostages to be released on Monday or Tuesday. He will be there when we start to see that happen, potentially on camera. But President Trump also said that he has been invited to speak at the Knesset, Israel's legislative body, an invitation he says that he will take once he is there. The president was asked if there will be any relocation of Palestinians in Gaza. If you kind of go into further phases of this plan, should they get there into the reconstruction timeline, the president said that they will not be forced out of the country.
And Aaron, is there any sense within the White House of caution? President not traveling until Sunday. There are things that are being closely watched on the ground, both in Gaza and Israel, signs that this either is coming together and gelling or possibly fraying. What's the sense there at the White House?
The sense that we have gotten from President Trump through his numerous events today is optimism that there will be a deal reached, confidence that at least this phase that will lead to the hostage release will happen, and has that buy-in from Israel and Hamas. The president was really giving the sense that it is that release of hostages that is the priority right now. Before you get into the reconstruction, before you get into what the full withdrawal of Israeli troops in Gaza looks like, it is the release of hostages. Though he noted that the actual hostages held by Hamas that are physically under the rubble of buildings that have been hit by Israeli military strikes, that there may be some difficulty in actually getting them out. But overall, it has been optimism from President Trump that this, at least phase one of this deal, will hold. We know that he is watching, along with U.S. officials Steve Witkoff and outside advisor Jared Kushner, this cabinet meeting in Israel, which looks like a formality to approve the deal, which will then kickstart that timeline where we could see hostages released next Monday or Tuesday.
Aaron Navarro, thank you. Very good stuff. I appreciate it. I further discussed the Israel-Hamas peace deal and much more, many more topics, with House Speaker Mike Johnson earlier today. Take a listen. Mr. Speaker, it's good to see you. Thanks for the time. Your reaction to President Trump's announced peace deal between Israel and Hamas in Gaza?
Well, it's a truly historic foreign affairs achievement. I mean, the president has shown a lot of strength since he was returned to the Oval Office, and again proving that we maintain peace through strength. A strong America is good for freedom-loving people around the world, and this is the latest benefit of that. And I think this is an historic thing, because what he's doing is he's not only returning hostages to their families after 2 years, but he's also bringing security again to our very important ally, Israel. And it appears they've laid the foundation for what could be a lasting peace in the Middle East. I mean, that's an objective that's been a part of our foreign policy and every other nation's for as long as anyone can remember. So it's a really important moment for history.
Mr. Speaker, do you envision a scenario where the president might ask Congress for funds to rebuild Gaza? If so, would you be supportive of that? And what about perhaps using U.S. military forces as part of an international security force to guarantee security there?
Well, I'm going to reserve judgment on any of those things because they're hypotheticals right now. I do know that all of our allies around the world have an equal interest in this, and I suspect this will be a project for many nations, or all nations. I mean, even the Arab states, of course, that are the closest neighbors, but also our European allies, and everyone has an interest in this. So this should be truly a world community coming together to help make this happen, and I hope that the U.S. would not be expected to shoulder the large share of the burden for that.
In another part of the world, Mr. Speaker, the president says he is close to sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, saying he has sort of made the decision and merely wants to know, quote, what they're going to do with them. Do you support that move? And would it place administration policy squarely behind the objective of Ukraine winning the war and regaining all of its lost territory?
Well, I'm going to let the commander-in-chief specify what the intent, what the objective would be there. But I will tell you that on behalf of Congress, there is a big appetite to get that conflict resolved, just as apparently we now have in Gaza. We need that conflict to come to an end as well. We've invested a lot there, of course. We have stood for the right side of this. Russia was the aggressor, and they have proven once again, as they have over and over, they simply cannot be trusted. Vladimir Putin cannot be trusted. And so the president's lost his patience with that. And so have we. Congress has an appetite as well to do serious sanctions as is necessary against Russia. And I communicate regularly with our allies around the world, and they feel the same way. So I think, once again, you have the international community united, I think, in purpose here, and I hope that has the desired effect.
Do you think Tomahawks could be a game changer?
Certainly would be, and you know, for a long time, Ukraine has requested weapons that were not provided to them to stretch further and do more in a defensive and then offensive posture to bring that war to an end. So we'll see. I mean, I suspect that would change the calculus there pretty substantially.
Mr. Speaker, is there any scenario that you can imagine where you would bring the House back into session without the Senate passing the House-passed continuing resolution?
Not at this moment, and I'll tell you why, because the House has done its job. I mean, it was September 19th now, almost 3 weeks ago, that we passed the clean continuing resolution, and we've spoken about this before, Major, but I mean, this was a totally good faith effort on the part of the Republicans to just keep the lights on, keep government operating, keep everyone in legislative session so we could do all the necessary policy disputes and debates that we had ahead of us. This was a bipartisan agreement, by the way. The Democrats and Republicans in the House, the appropriators who are working on the government funding bills, said we need 7 more weeks. We need to go to November 21st, and let's just do a simple stopgap measure, totally clean. We didn't put any Republican priorities on it, no poison pills, no gimmicks. It's the exact same product that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats in the Senate voted on back in March. They voted for it, and now they've changed their tune. I think we all know why. They wanted to put up a fight, show a fight. But they're engaging in a charade here, and real Americans are being harmed.
Why not, Mr. Speaker, call the House back into session to consider the unpassed appropriations bill? 3 have cleared the House, 9 remain pending. You could bring the House back to do that work. Why not do that?
Well, I would tell you a lot of that work is being done short of passage on the House floor. There's a lot of negotiation, deliberation going on even as we speak. The appropriators working together, not just Republicans and Democrats in the House, but across chambers. You've got Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and the House talking about that, preparing these products for floor passage. But we have to get, first things first, we have to get the government in operation again, get military troops paid, Border Patrol, TSA, air traffic controllers, food and nutrition programs, and Veterans Health Services, and all the rest. We got to get that done first. It's the most basic obligation of the federal government to provide for the citizens, provide for their security, and to keep the lights on, keep the doors open. And Chuck Schumer is playing political games right now for his own political future. He's afraid he's going to get a challenge from the Marxist left in his party, and so he's dramatically changed course from everything he's said for over 40 years here in the Congress. Roll the tape. I mean, he himself has given impassioned pleas to keep the government open. This is the first time in history, Major, that a clean CR has ever been the subject of a government shutdown. They are playing a political stunt, and it's dangerous for real Americans.
Mr. Speaker, I want to play for you some sound from a member of your conference in good standing, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's listen.
I'm not putting the blame on the president. I'm actually putting the blame on the speaker and Leader Thune in the Senate. This should not be happening.
So you're putting the blame on the leadership of your party?
Absolutely. We control the House. We control the Senate. We have the White House. I've been vocal saying, you can use the nuclear option in the Senate. This doesn't have to be a shutdown. But what we have to do is we have to work for the American people.
Quick translation for my audience, Mr. Speaker. What she's referring to there is ending the Senate filibuster rule, passing an end to the shutdown with a simple 50-vote Republican majority. It is theoretically possible. Do you in any way support that fundamental alteration of Senate rules to end this impasse?
Well, as Speaker of the House, I control this chamber on this side.
I know that, Mr. Speaker,
I don't have any say in that matter. But, well, I do have thoughts. I think the filibuster is an important tradition over there because it safeguards what might happen if the tables were turned. I told my friend Marjorie, I don't know how and under what universe of possibility this would ever be the Speaker's fault. We did our job. We passed the CR and we sent it to the Senate. The ball's in their court. And I told her that she needs to consider carefully what would happen if you blow that up. What happens when the shoe's on the other foot? If you have, socialist, Marxist Democrats in charge of the Democrat Party and they only need 51 votes in the Senate, if they ever achieve that, they could do lots of nefarious things with the federal budget, with government growth, with creating new states, in Puerto Rico, for example, or some others that want to do that. I mean, it could be mayhem. There are some safeguards in the system, and you have to talk to our Senate colleagues about all that. But it's an argument they make, and I find it very compelling. I think it's something that bears a lot of thought.
She also said, that is to say, Marjorie Taylor Greene, that it is incumbent upon Republicans to negotiate with Democrats to avoid premium increases destined for Americans who currently receive enhanced Obamacare subsidies. Now, you've implied that Congresswoman Greene's not fully read in on all the health care specifics. Is that still your position, that she's not really read in enough to have an opinion on that?
Well, I don't know what Marjorie has reviewed. I know she's not on the committees of jurisdiction who spend every hour of every day around the clock specializing on these issues and doing a lot of work and deliberation on it. Major, I want to tell you, we were always preparing to have those debates in the month of October and November. That's an end-of-the-year policy issue. Those subsidies don't run out. They're not exhausted until December 31st. So it's a red herring. It's a distraction to the very simple matter of keeping the lights on before the end of the fiscal year deadline, September 30th. Democrats are using that to obscure that issue so that they can show a fight against Trump. It's a complete red herring. It's a complete distraction. It doesn't have anything to do with what we're doing right now. What they're doing, though, is real harm, not just to American people who are not receiving the services, but they're also eating up a lot of the clock in the month of October, where everyone would be here, productively debating and determining how to bring down costs in Obamacare, which is failing the people. It's an admission by the Democrats, by the way, that they need subsidies because premiums have risen 60% since Obamacare was created in 2010. It did not do as promised. It did exactly the opposite.
Next, the rest of my conversation with House Speaker Mike Johnson, his thoughts on the Trump agenda and how he says it may take some time, but he says benefit many, many millions of Americans. Also, on tonight's Takeout, Israeli Ambassador to the United States, Yechiel Leiter, joins me to discuss the deal between Israel and Hamas. And we ask how strong or fragile it is. Plus, a list of failures in the Jeffrey Epstein death investigation, what crime scene experts are telling our Scott McFarland. All that next. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to the Takeout. CBS News polling shows, stop me if you've heard this before, the economy and inflation, top issues for American voters. Most right now, according to our most recent survey, not so happy about the President Trump's handling of those issues. I asked Speaker Johnson about that and a lot more. Second part of our conversation. Mr. Speaker, I want to review with you some recent CBS News polling. And just for your edification, we were very close in 2024. We were very close in 2020. We were very close in 2016. Our polling unit has a pretty good track record, and it shows this. On immigration, 45% of those polled support the president's policies, 55% disapprove. On the economy, 40% approve, 60% disapprove. Inflation, 35% approve, 65% disapprove. How do you evaluate those numbers?
Well, look, I'm not going to criticize CBS's polling, but I can tell you, you and I both know, depends on how you ask the question and to whom you ask it, okay? There's lots of polls on the other side of that as well. I mean, when we passed the big, beautiful bill, got it signed into law July 4th, we poll tested 17 of the 21 major provisions of that giant piece of legislation, the Working Families Tax Cut, and almost all of them were over 70%, some 80% approval. So it depends on who you ask and when and under what circumstances. This is what I will tell you. I believe this country is headed in the right direction. I believe America's back. I believe that we had the most productive first start of any Congress and administration, arguably, at least in the modern era and maybe in U.S. history with our marquee legislation. You think of what the President Trump and Republicans have accomplished. We are cutting taxes for hardworking Americans, focused on the lower and middle class earners in this country, no taxes on tips, overtime, all the rest. We are eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse in the government. We are ending the crime crisis. We're ending the border crisis. And now President Trump is settling disputes around the globe. I mean, this is a very productive Congress, a very productive administration, and the American people are doing well by the results. And they'll see that, I'm very confident, before the midterm election next year.
You have no fear that on immigration, economy, and inflation, the president is net underwater?
I don't, because it takes a little while for all of those pro-growth policies that we've signed into law to take the real effect, for everybody to see the positive effects of that. I believe they will. I know they will. We did that in the first Trump administration. This is not theory. We cut taxes and cut regulations, and we had the greatest economy in the history of the world prior to COVID. So barring some unforeseen circumstance like that, I'm convinced the American people are going to be doing much better, and we'll see the results. Let the results speak for themselves.
Mr. Speaker, when will Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva be sworn in?
As soon as we get back here to regular session. I mean, her two senators from Arizona were in front of my office for a publicity stunt yesterday, and I walked out to greet them and set them straight on the record. She will be sworn in as soon as we all get back here, so they can go over and vote yes to reopen the government, and they can get their rep-elect in. Somebody asked, well, you did a special oath ceremony for two Floridians a couple of months ago that was just in a pro forma session that didn't have everyone here. And I pointed out the obvious distinction. It's apples to oranges. Those two members had a predetermined date. They had flown in all their family and friends for the big event, and Congress went out of session unexpectedly early. So they were all here. We did them a courtesy of just making sure that happened on that day. They didn't get all the bells and whistles and all the trappings that everybody else gets because it was just an empty chamber almost, but just their family and friends. The difference now is that Representative-elect Grijalva has never had a date set. She won her election after the House was out of session. So this is nothing but a scheduling matter. As soon as we get back to regular session, the legislative session, we will bring her in and we'll of course, administer her the oath as soon as we get back.
Before I let you go, Mr. Speaker, I want to give you an opportunity to address what Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, has said. He said she has not been sworn in because you want to avoid the discharge petition on the Epstein files because Adelita Grijalva has said publicly to me and others she would be a signatory, which would be 218. Your response?
It's an absurd allegation. The Epstein files are being released. The investigation is underway. The House Oversight Committee has been working on this vigorously. And by the way, that committee includes some of the biggest bulldogs in Congress on the Republican and Democrat side. Their lawyers are in New York. We're in New York City over the last few days pouring through the Epstein estate files, which, by the way, were never even anticipated in Thomas Massie's discharge gambit, okay? That work is being done. And we were for maximum transparency, and we want every single one of those documents to be out, and they will be in short order, 34,000 of them already. The subpoenas are flying. They're being complied with by DOJ, and we're going to continue that work. The one thing we have to safeguard that Thomas Massie seems to not care about is protecting the innocent victims. By some estimates, as many as 1,000 young women suffered at the harms of these traffickers, and we have to make sure that their identities are protected and redacted from the records so they don't suffer more harm. And his discharge was reckless. It was not drafted in such a way as would do that. And I think that's a very important duty and responsibility we have.
Last question, Mr. Speaker. Oversight Committee Chairman James Comey told me he opposes any consideration within the administration of clemency or a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell. Do you agree?
I do, of course, yeah. I think she was convicted on sex trafficking charges, and she was at least aware and probably enabled a lot of the harms that befell all these young women, and she deserves to stay in prison for the rest of her life.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the time as always. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Major. Appreciate it.
International praise for President Trump on the Israel-Gaza peace deal. A closer look at the role he played in brokering an agreement. Next, with Israel's ambassador to the United States. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to the Takeout. First, a quick correction. Those of you listening closely, and you know who you are, heard me say to the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, that James Comey was the Oversight Committee chairman. Wrong. James Comer, Republican of Kentucky. I apologize for that small mistake. I'll try to do better. Meanwhile, something happened in the Middle East today that hasn't happened in a very, very long time. Celebrations erupted in Israel and Gaza at the same time after Israel and Hamas agreed to the first phase of President Trump's peace plan. Israeli Ambassador to the United States, York Leiter, joins me now. Mr. Ambassador, I appreciate the time. Tell me, how did this peace deal come about, and how fragile do you perceive it to be?
Well, I think it came about two major vectors. The first, of course, is President Trump's personal involvement and the pressure that he placed on the Arab states that are hosting Hamas and had the ability to put the pressure on Hamas, particularly Qatar and Turkey, but Egypt as well. And basically, he read them the riot act and said they've got to bring Hamas to the table now. He wants this over. And that's something that they followed through on and deserve considerable amount of credit for having done so. The second vector is, of course, the IDF. And without military pressure on Gaza City, the last stronghold of Hamas, they wouldn't have come to the table. So it was Hamas being under pressure, both diplomatically from the President of the United States and militarily from the IDF under Prime Minister Netanyahu's instruction, that this was able to congeal and come together. Is it fragile? It's always fragile when we're dealing with a terrorist organization such as Hamas. And just today, as we were going into the ceasefire mode, one of their terrorists killed one of our soldiers just a few hours ago. That's, of course, going to necessitate some degree of retaliation. So this could spiral, but we are very, very hopeful. We're full of prayer that by Monday, Tuesday, we'll see the 20 living hostages and at least most of the dead hostages returned to us.
Mr. Ambassador, how will the world know it's working, or how might it detect that it's unraveling?
Well, look, an incident like this morning, if there's going to be continued shooting, by Hamas, then it's going to be unraveling. Hopefully, that's not going to be the case. Ultimately, the plan has to move from phase one to phase two. And phase two means what the Prime Minister of Israel has been saying now for 2 years. Gaza cannot remain a jihadi stronghold. Hamas has to be disarmed. That's part of the plan. And Gaza demilitarized. If the world follows through on that plan, which sees Hamas disarmed completely and Gaza as a whole de-radicalized and demilitarized by an international agency headed by President Trump, then we're going to know that it's working.
And do you have confidence, Mr. Ambassador, to the point you just raised, that Hamas will leave Gaza and you will know that all of Hamas has left Gaza and will not return indirectly or directly?
We have to hope so. I mean, leave, whether it's leave physically or leave any status of power within Gaza. Look, most of the leadership of Hamas has been eliminated. Those that remain have to remain outside the contours of power. And that goes for the Palestinian Authority as well. They can't be in charge of Gaza. They were given Gaza by us in 2006, and within a year, the Gazans voted in Hamas, and Hamas dropped the Palestinian Authority officers off rooftops and just basically threw them out, took over, and have been dominating Hamas for 20 years, have been dominating Gaza for 20 years. So this can't return. We can't return to the same pattern. We are a tiny country, and we simply cannot have jihadis at our border, whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in Lebanon or the Syrian border. We've made it very clear. October 7th has taught us, the Prime Minister has repeated this again and again. October 7th has taught us that we cannot have jihadi militants sitting at our border. And that's ultimately what we want to achieve here. A different type of life for the Gazans, a different type of border for Israel, and hopefully the beginning of a process that can lead to peace throughout the region.
As you know, Mr. Ambassador, things were different on October 6th. There were efforts by the Netanyahu government to subsidize Hamas, understanding or thinking that that would placate them. There was much more emphasis on the West Bank, but October 7th changed everything. Were there miscalculations within Israel before October 7th?
Well, we did have a situation where our intel community believed that Hamas had no intentions of attacking. So to that degree, there were some mistakes. It was a perfect storm on October 7th. I mean, everything failed that morning. But we reconstituted very quickly. I mean, our young soldiers, even before they actually had orders, ran into their cars, took their weapons, and went racing south so that the onslaught that Hamas was implementing in the south was stopped. Had literally thousands of our young men and women not taken the initiative, who knows, Hamas would have reached Tel Aviv. But we have a tremendous young generation. They've proven themselves over these past 2 years, and they stopped the Hamas onslaught, and basically they brought this war to a conclusion through their determination. We've lost some 900 soldiers. One of them was my oldest son, who led the forces into Gaza right after October 7th. And we're missing them very much, but we're also very proud because they've ensured that we're going to be able to go on in safe and security.
As best you understand it, Mr. Ambassador, how will the hostage release occur, and do you expect President Trump to be there?
Well, we're actually talking to the White House right now. I just left a telephone call to meet with you, Major. But we're hoping that the president at this point will come sometime on Monday morning and stay a few hours and deliver an address at our parliament, our Knesset, and then leave perhaps for Egypt. So we're working on the details now. It'll be a great, great day when we can welcome President Trump and Israel into our Knesset and really express tremendous thanks for his personal involvement in seeing this through. And the fact that he's taken upon himself to be the president or the chairman of the Peace Board, which will rebuild Gaza without Hamas, is, I think, very telling of his personal involvement in seeing that this ultimately goes into a pattern of a large-scale peace agreement for the region.
Israeli Ambassador to the United States, Yechiel Leiter. Mr. Leiter, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Major. Good to be with you.
Legal challenges to National Guard deployments go before federal judges in Illinois and Oregon as troops get set to hit the streets in another state. We're tracking the latest on that front, many fronts, here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. Here's a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. We have now learned the charges filed against New York Attorney General Letitia James. A Virginia grand jury has indicted James on 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of making false statements to a financial institution. James was being investigated for mortgage fraud after she allegedly falsely described her Norfolk, Virginia home as a primary residence. This in order to secure a more favorable interest rate on a home mortgage loan. James has denied wrongdoing. President Trump has repeatedly complained about James, who pursued successfully a civil fraud case against him that resulted in a nearly $500 million set of penalties. We are watching 2 key legal battles that could determine the fate of President Trump's National Guard deployments in Portland and Chicago. In Chicago, court resumed late today as a judge considers arguments on the legality of deploying the Guard there. So far, troops have been blocked from the streets of Portland, and no decision was reached today on whether or not that will change. National Guard troops are expected to arrive in Memphis Friday. The troops there are said to assist with a multi-agency initiative to combat violent street crime. Tomorrow, President Trump will get what the White House is calling a routine yearly medical checkup. However, that would make it his 2nd checkup in the last 6 months. The last at Walter Reed Medical Center was in April when he was found to be in, quote, excellent health. But in July, the White House revealed the president was suffering from what it called a benign condition that impacts his blood flow. A bruise on the back of the president's right hand has also been the focus of much curiosity and some speculation. The White House said that bruise is a result of vigorous and frequent handshaking. CBS News Investigations has obtained 90 photos from the day convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell. Some of those photos have never been seen publicly before. What they tell us about Epstein's last moments, we'll talk about it next right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. After Jeffrey Epstein's death, then Attorney General Bill Barr said that Epstein died by suicide and that a, quote, perfect storm of screw-ups, unquote, occurred inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York. Scott McFarland has new reporting in this investigation.
On the morning of August 10th, 2019, convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was found dead at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan. This was the vow of then Attorney General Bill Barr.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability.
Epstein's death was quickly ruled a suicide. But an investigation of jail cell photos by CBS News, working with forensic experts, has raised serious questions about the New York Medical Examiner and the FBI's work, including a failure to preserve the scene, log evidence, and run basic forensic tests. There are 90 photos in all, showing a cell strewn with blankets and strips of fabric tied to the bed and window grate. Items moved around, including a mattress, which is seen on the floor in an earlier photo, but appears on the bed in a later one. Looking at the metadata, that second photo appears to have been taken at 11:02 a.m. If that's accurate, the scene had been disturbed hours before FBI investigators arrived. Investigators also found several possible nooses, but did not conclusively identify the one that killed him.
What do you make of all these pictures?
I make a crime scene gone wrong.
Herman Weisberg is a former NYPD detective turned private investigator.
Does it look to you like this was investigated as a suicide or as a murder?
To me, this looks like they took it at face value that this was a suicide.
While our investigation did not contradict the official determination of suicide, it does raise questions about what was done to rule out the possibility of murder.
If you realize that you've got a high-profile person that may or may not have committed suicide, but you need to prove that to people, this is not adequate as far as I'm concerned.
We've reached out for comment for the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner and the staff at the FBI and the Department of Justice. As of now, all have declined to comment. Scott McFarland, CBS News, Washington.
Still to come, Katie Porter's bad week gets bleeping worse. The newly surfaced video that shows the frontrunner in next year's race for California governor screaming at a staff member. More on that next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. For Katie Porter, the videos keep coming, and that's not necessarily good news. Last night, we showed part of an interview with Porter that she did with one of our CBS reporters in California. Porter, by the way, is the current frontrunner for the Democratic nomination for governor, and she threatened to end an interview with that reporter. Another video surfaced last night in which Porter shouts at an employee of hers visible in a Zoom interview. Take a look.
Get out of my f***ing shot. Okay, it does. Okay, you also were in my shot before that. Stay out of my shot. Okay.
Oh, yeah, stay out of my shot, please. Maybe, I don't know. That got lost in translation. I want to bring in our panel, a reporter panel. Congressional reporter for the Washington Post, Maria Sotomayor. Washington Deputy Bureau Chief for Bloomberg News, Laura Davidson. Oh, it's been a long day. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Your reaction to Katie Porter?
Yeah, you know, I got a lot of Democrats, including some of her former colleagues from the House, texting me the initial interview that came out.
With Julie Watts of our,
yes.
of our CBS station in California.
Correct. And they were not surprised. Why? Because she had a reputation even in the House of being very brash. She actually was one of the lawmakers who had the highest staff turnovers on Capitol Hill. And it was part of her reputation. There were reports out during that time when she served about how she handled staff. So inside of the Beltway, I'd say none of this is surprising. But back in California, man, I've been talking to some Democratic strategists, including some who are advising some of her opponents.
Some of her, yes.
Yeah, and they are...
They see an opening.
They absolutely see an opening, yes. And the reason why is because so far, there hasn't been that much attention on this governor's race, even in the state. This is the first viral moment, and it is everywhere. And now it's up to these voters to determine whether she is fit to serve in that capacity.
Laura, any thoughts on this?
The thing that's the through line really between these two videos is these are both times when she knew she was being recorded. She was doing a Zoom interview. She was, on camera. This isn't necessarily a hot mic moment or something where she may have been vulnerable or not really realizing that it was for everybody. So that is probably something that voters are going to look at and see as concerning when she's in the public eye.
Judgment and temperament, if they so care about that. Reaction to Letitia James' indictment. She has posted that she is fearless and will fight this and considers this weaponization of the Trump Justice Department.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we shouldn't be surprised. It comes a day after Comey, right, pled not guilty. Similarly, we've seen how Trump has put Lindsay Halligan, I believe is her name.
Yes.
She is the one who is bringing forth these charges.
U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia.
Yeah, and my colleagues are actually reporting that she was the one who went before this grand jury to seek this indictment. That's not typical of someone in her position, and that people who would be in that position to do that actually over in Virginia did not. They actually sheltered their own team because they knew that these charges were very weak. So this is just another example of Trump. He has said for years, even on the campaign trail, he seeks retribution. This is one step and another step further and another example.
And Laura,
of this.
to that point, it may indicate that the line prosecutors in the office of the Eastern District of Virginia are like, no, this is not a case we should bring. And if we do, we might get egg on our face.
Yes, I mean, we saw that in the Attorney General for the Eastern District stepping down. You saw these prosecutors come over from North Carolina to prosecute this case. Letitia James is also in sort of an advantageous position here in that James Comey's case is on, running a couple weeks ahead of hers. Of course, there's different facts and circumstances that, they won't necessarily go the same way, but it'll be curious to see if she sort of follows the same model of saying, look, I'm going to fight this. We're going to go to trial. And, presuming that she's at least up front, that she's going to win.
You both pay very close attention to Capitol Hill. Do either of you detect any give in the currently trench-defined combat over the shutdown?
No, not right now. And I don't think we'll see anything change really until possibly next Wednesday. The reason why, it's October 15th. That's the day that troops presumably would be getting paid. They're not going to. And we have seen how Republicans are not budging on one. Speaker Johnson does not want to bring back the House to even have a vote on this. And the Senate,
I asked him if there was any date he could imagine bringing the House back absent the Senate resolving this. He said no.
Yeah, he's
flat.
Not. Exactly. So the House is pretty much all quiet as of right now, and I don't see it changing.
Laura, do you detect anything?
No, right now they need to see something really bad happen. A lot of side hallway
conversation, but amounting to nothing.
We need to see big delays at airports. We need to see, goods not crossing the border. There needs to be sort of pain before Congress is going to act in this one.
That's so reassuring to the American public. You have to suffer more and be more angry about it before Congress will do anything to resolve this. Very quickly, it seems the president deserves some credit for this Middle East deal. He's justifiably proud, and it looks like it possibly could be something really meaningful.
Yeah, and you're seeing it from both sides of the aisle, which is pretty rare. You've even seen Democratic leaders applaud the president being able to get this deal done. Republicans, of course, saying this should be evidence that he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize.
There's a lot of, the devil is in the details here. The question is, does this hold? For now, it looks like all the partners in the region are on board, but the longevity here will be the question. And if it does stick, that could mean that Trump could be up for a Nobel Peace Prize next year.
And it would be amazing video if he's there when the hostage release is actually going on. I mean, quite separate from an address before the Knesset, it could be optics that no previous president has ever imagined or been able to achieve. Maria Sotomayor, Laura Davison, thank you so much. Ooh, rough on the intros. My apologies. It's a long day. Sometimes I'm better than other days. On that score, ladies and gentlemen, happy Thursday, everyone. This is The Takeout. You know what we are? Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report starts now.